Let's dive into a story that really gets to the heart of a tough question, one that pits corporate ambition right up against human safety. It's the story of a car company facing an absolutely monumental decision, a true cautionary tale. And it all really boils down to this one single, stark question. When profit and safety are on a collision course, which one is going to give way? This is the exact deadly choice that the Bobo car company had to make. So let's set the scene. Our story kicks off with a simple, really powerful promise a company made to its customers. Now, Bobo was already an established car company, but they saw this huge, untapped opportunity in the economy market. Their big plan? To launch a brand new model, the Bobo Foo. The whole idea was for it to be cheap to buy, cheap to run, and easy to fix. This was their ticket into a whole new ballgame. And the guy pushing this whole project forward was the CEO, James Tsakos. His mantra, his constant order to the entire design team, was simple, and he was relentless about it. Keep it cheap. This single-minded focus on cost would end up shaping every single decision that followed. And this is where you really start to see the pressure mount. I mean, a typical car in this class takes about 43 months to develop from start to finish. Tsakos wanted the Bobo Foo on the market in just 25 months. That is an incredibly crunched timeline, which meant cutting corners wasn't just likely, it was pretty much guaranteed. And, well, cutting those corners led directly to our next chapter, a really dangerous discovery. So the design team, led by a woman named Kathy Yao, was under this immense pressure to find ways to save money. And one of their key cost-cutting ideas had to do with the fuel tank. Instead of putting it in the safer spot on top of the rear axle, they moved it behind the axle. It's a seemingly small change, right? But it was one with absolutely deadly potential. And here's the thing, they knew it. Before this car even went into full production, their very own crash tests showed that this new fuel tank placement was a major fire hazard in a rear-end collision. The warning signs were all there, clear as day, right in their own internal data. And tragically, this wasn't just some theoretical risk on a spreadsheet. Soon after the Bobo Foo launched, a truck crashed into the back of one. The fuel tank split open. The car was just engulfed in flames, and 3 people lost their lives. The design flaw had now gone from an internal memo to a fatal, horrifying reality. This tragedy forced a major confrontation in the boardroom, boiling the entire mess down to one impossible conflict: profit versus people. So here's the crucial point. The board had 2 choices on the table. Option A, a universal recall, bring every single Bobo Foo back and retrofit it with a safer fuel tank design. Option B, do nothing to the cars and instead just pay out compensation to victims or their families as the crash has happened. When they crunched the numbers, the choice became incredibly stark. The recall, the option to guarantee public safety, was going to cost them an estimated $750 million. But just paying compensation to the victims, that was projected to cost only $200 million. The financial incentive to choose the cheaper, more cynical path was absolutely massive. And this quote, I think it perfectly illustrates where their heads were at. The source material makes it clear. The board saw the cost of stopping and retooling the production line as the most important factor in their decision, more important than the known safety risk. This intense focus on cost led to an almost inevitable choice, which brings us to Chapter 4, the decision and its incredible fallout. So maybe it's not surprising, but the board chose the cheaper path. They voted to keep making the Bobo Foo just as it was, with that dangerous fuel tank, and to simply deal with the consequences by paying out compensation claims. But the story did not end there. An unknown member of the board, a whistleblower, leaked the internal memo that detailed this cold, calculated decision. As you can imagine, the public and the media were outraged. And, crucially, the big institutional shareholders revolted. They demanded what's called an extraordinary general meeting, basically an emergency shareholder meeting, to hold the board accountable. So why? Why did they make this choice in the first place? To really understand that, we need to look at the anatomy of that decision. A really useful framework for this is a psychological theory from Lawrence Kohlberg on moral development. It's a way of mapping out how different people reason their way through tough ethical dilemmas like this one. So Kohlberg identifies 3 main levels: At the first, pre-conventional level, it's all about self-interest. What do I get out of this? Or how do I avoid getting in trouble? Then there's the conventional level, where you're guided by social norms, what's expected of you by your peers or society. And finally, at the highest, post-conventional level, you're guided by universal ethical principles, what's right and just, regardless of the rules or what others think. Now, if we apply this framework to our key players, it gets really fascinating. The finance director, Vernon Vim, who argued for just paying compensation, was operating at that pre-conventional level. He was focused purely on company profits and, you got to assume, his own bonuses. CEO James Tsakos was at the conventional level, worried about meeting shareholder expectations. And what's really interesting is that the designer, Kathy Yao, who argued for the recall, was also at the conventional level, but her focus was on a different group. She was worried about meeting society's expectation for safety. And all of this leaves us with the central question of this entire case. A company's legal duty is, most of the time, to its shareholders to maximize their value. But what about its ethical duty to society? The story of the Bobo shows just how blurry and how incredibly dangerous that line can become.